So tell us a little bit about yourself, background, like first day of school type stuff.
Yeah, so I am Dave Boliek. I'm the newly elected North Carolina auditor. I am born and raised in North Carolina. I actually born in Lincolnton, and I've lived in about 17 different communities across the state of North Carolina. For the last probably 26 years or so, I've lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina, in the shadow of Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty. Was an attorney there, practicing attorney. I'm a former prosecutor, so I've got experience as a prosecutor. And then decided to run for North Carolina Auditor based on the experiences that I had as chair of the board at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I tell folks, and I've told folks on the campaign trail, what really inspired me to run for state auditor was the work that we were able to do, particularly on the budget at UNC Chapel Hill. When I was first put on the board, that university was run on 16 separate budgets, managing a $4.4 billion a year spend, and I felt like there needed to be some consistency and one singular all funds budget. So myself and a group of folks worked with the administration to reform the budget process at UNC Chapel Hill, and we were able to do that. We were able to consolidate to one all funds budget, and in the process found a $100 million structural deficit. Set about the work to clean that up, and within 13 months had it to a zero-based budget, balanced, and now the university is running actually a slight surplus. So it was that experience and being able to take something and see it come full circle and get some productive result for the university in that case that really inspired me to run for state auditor. I think I could take that type of leadership to the auditor's office.
Because you're not in it to be a politician. You want to help fix things, whatever the right word is.
Right. Well, I mean, look, the state auditor, interestingly enough, and I learned this early after the election, the state auditor actually takes a third oath of office. And that third oath of office deals with, not being partisan in the job, right? Now, I ran as a Republican, and I'm a proud member of the Republican Party. But, you leave the party label at the door when you're doing the job of the state auditor, because ultimately you work for all the taxpayers of North Carolina. And the job is to hold all levels of government accountable for waste, fraud, and abuse, and for efficiency.
And that doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican.
Doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated. What matters is are you a North Carolinian? And do you care about this state, and do you care about how government works? And I think I checked that box. I'm gonna do my very best every single day to uphold that ideal.
So you're out in Asheville, trying to rack our brains when the last time the state auditor was here, but just tell us a little bit about why you wanted to be out here a week into this thing.
Well, yeah, I'm really happy to be in Asheville. I've had family that has been up here in Asheville. I actually spent, until the last 2 or 3 years, the last 20 plus years at Christmas time in Arden with my in-laws. So I'm very familiar with Asheville. But we wanted to come up to Asheville within the first week of operating and taking over the office. To meet with the team here in Asheville. The state auditor's office has a robust team stationed here in Asheville. We have a regional office in Asheville. I wanted to check in on the team to make sure that their families were okay and that their work situation was fine following the storm. I wanted to make sure if there's anything we could do from the home office in Raleigh to support them, that they knew they could count on us to help with support. So we're up here today primarily to meet with them to make sure that they're okay, they're all accounted for, and to see if there's anything we can do to help them.
Initial meeting, you don't need to go in specifics, I would never ask, but what was that like to meet the team and touch base?
We've got some great experienced auditors. Look, one thing I've learned, I came in on the 2nd of January, been in the office every day, met with team members across the state and in Raleigh. Got some really fantastic, dedicated folks in the state auditor's office who are proud of their job, proud of the work they do. There's no exception here in Asheville. We've got a fantastic team here. They do a lot of work in the university setting. They do a lot of work across different aspects of government, not just auditing local governments and county governments, but other state agencies, and they collaborate with teams across the state of North Carolina. So have a really, really strong team here in Asheville. Really proud to be their leader.
So, I don't know, I said this earlier about dumbing it down, but in its simplest forms, explain what your office does. What does auditing look like in North Carolina?
Yeah, so the state auditor really is in charge of keeping all state agencies, whether they be a pure state agency or whether it be a municipality or a county government, accountable to the people. What that looks like is it looks basically two areas. One is financial accountability. That is, are the books balanced? Is the money being spent the way the legislature appropriated it? Are the numbers adding up at the end of the day, and does the balance sheet balance, right? Are the ledgers in order? We look at, as part of that financial accountability, waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's on the financial side of the house. We also have a performance side of the house, and that's where the state auditor's office goes in and asks the question, what is being done in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of state agencies, all right? And one thing that I have talked about on the campaign trail and that we will accomplish in our office is a floor-to-ceiling audit of the DMV, for example. There's an agency that has not been efficient and not been effective for the people of the state of North Carolina. I've been from Murphy to Mania, so to speak, and I've talked to people in all walks of life. Doesn't matter what station in life you are, most people come into contact with the DMV. And I've not found a lot of people real happy or satisfied with the service they've gotten from the DMV, so I've pledged to do a floor-to-ceiling audit of the DMV, not just financially, but for effectiveness and efficiency. And the aim is to provide at the end of that audit some solid recommendations on how to make that agency work more efficiently and effectively for the people of North Carolina. So there's an example of a pure performance audit.
Here, it's not just about dollars and cents all the time.
It's not all just about dollars and cents.
Even though I guess efficiency does transition to dollars and cents eventually, right?
It is. So you've got, ultimately I guess the question is return on investment, right? And return on investment can look like two things, right? It can look like a return on financial dollars spent. What are taxpayers are paying taxes? Are they getting a return on their investment from a financial standpoint, right? But also the secondary question, which is where we get into the performance and efficiency aspect of auditing, are they getting a return on the investment with respect to a quality of life? What is their quality of life like? Look, there are essential government services, law enforcement, firefighting, water across municipalities, provide water services. Many municipalities are electric cities, right? And they provide their own electricity. So those essential services really go to the quality of life of North Carolinians. It also goes to the business climate in North Carolina. Are we providing the right climate for business to want to locate here in North Carolina and help our economy grow?
So I think what a lot of our viewers will be interested in from your office is what your role is in doling out these what is going to end up being billions of dollars in relief funds for Helene. What oversight does your office have for that federal money and the state money?
Yeah, so it's a great question. With respect to disaster relief funding, our office has plenary authority to audit disaster relief, both from federal dollars, once they hit the state coffers and come into the state. Not only do we have the authority to audit, we're really required to audit the expenditures of those federal funds, okay? And furthermore, if you can combine that financial audit capacity with how the money is spent, right, and the effectiveness of the spend on those dollars, that's where our office can really shine by taking a look at exactly how those dollars are spent and reporting it. Look, it's not our job. We don't want to get in the way of disaster response. I want to be real clear about that. Our office has no intent of getting in the way of any type of expenditure of disaster dollars. Our job as the state auditor's office is to report back the results of that spend and how effective those dollars were and whether those dollars were spent like they were appropriated to be spent. And in the end, how taxpayers really expect those dollars to be spent.
And I'm looking at the statement here, but the governor issued those executive orders last week, and you said, great, but here's a few things that I'm going to be wanting to look into. So it sounds like you guys are lockstep in the need, but we want to make sure we're filling that need efficiently.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, the governor and I are in lockstep on prioritizing the response to Helene here in Western North Carolina. I think that's really clear. I'm very confident that the entire Council of State is in lockstep to want to respond to Western North Carolina. Where the role of the state auditor comes into play and where the state auditor can be effective is in tracking that response. So it's great that the governor has issued executive orders, and where we sort of had some input into those executive orders was on two specific executive orders that required concurrence from the Council of State. One was to go outside of the bidding process to purchase 1,000 trailers for temporary housing. The second was to go outside of the bidding process to get contractors in to repair private roads and private bridges, okay? Both great ideas, right? But it's incumbent upon the state auditor's office to not only track those two specific executive orders, and I concurred with them, but put the governor on notice that we're going to track those dollars and make sure that they're spent and make sure that we're getting bang for the buck and effectiveness when the state is expending those dollars on behalf of victims of the storm here in Western North Carolina.
And on the ground, I mean, what does that look like for your office? What are you guys going to be doing to ensure that?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, day one, January 2nd, I put a team together inside the auditor's office that'll be tasked with tracking the dollars. What that looks like is that looks like the source of funds goes through the Department of Public Safety and through the governor's newly created GROW office. So we will have teams that work with the accounting software to track every single dollar that comes in, the inflows and the outflows. It also looks like being on the ground and actually taking a hard look. You know, I was in Hickory today and took a look at some FEMA trailers there. And as these trailers are brought into Western North Carolina, I may personally be there to sort of take a look and count them to make sure that we're getting some value out of those trailers that are being used for temporary housing and make sure that we're actually getting them. And that also looks like our team asking the question, who's distributing the aid? You know, who's it being distributed to? How's it being distributed? And what's the timeline?
Have you learned anything in the first week about that timeline?
Haven't learned a whole lot,
Okay.
to be quite honest. Again, we just put the team together on the 2nd of January, and so we've got some follow-up meetings with that agency. I know that the governor just hired a new head of his response to Western North Carolina, so I'm sure they're just getting their feet wet. But again, there's not a lot of time to waste. We need to get on it quick. And our team will be monitoring it because, quite frankly, I expect on behalf of the state taxpayers of North Carolina that we're on it quick. And there's really not a whole lot of time to waste. I mean, for example, as you and I speak, we got snow coming in.
Yeah. I covered I guess he was the governor-elect at that point. He was giving his speech, and he said, good ideas are not reserved for Democrats or Republicans or independents. I want to listen to everybody. And the Grow NC is a good example of that. It's an extremely bipartisan group. Is that, I guess, encouraging to see that, forget political parties, he's bringing in people with different ideas in to tackle this one issue, and it sounds like that's something that you agree with.
Totally agree. Look, we're all North Carolinians, right? And it's time to work on behalf of all North Carolinians. And I've got a good working relationship with Governor Stein. I've known him for quite a while. We've talked on the phone several times. I feel good about the stated direction, but it's my job as the state auditor to hold them accountable, and we intend on doing that. Earlier today, as part of my trip up here, we had a business roundtable in Hickory, where I met with business leaders from across Western North Carolina to get some input. And maybe it's a fair question to ask, well, why would the state auditor be meeting with business leaders to get input on what's going on in Western North Carolina? It's because our teams can go in and give taxpayers a really good numerical data report on the dollars. But unless we can really put those dollars into context and give a meaning behind those dollars, our black and white audits don't mean a whole lot. And so I've got a commitment to, when we do audits, and they're financial audits, and they're based on, where is money spent, this number of dollars is spent here, this number of dollars spent there. I think what really taxpayers want is they want to know exactly what does that mean, right? How many bridges were fixed? How many roads were fixed? And what did those bridges and roads look like? And where did they go to? Where did they lead to? It's those types of questions that I think taxpayers and the citizens of North Carolina can look forward to reading in our audit reports moving forward, is really contextual with solid information on exactly what these numbers mean to individual North Carolinians. And that's why I'm meeting with folks around the state of North Carolina and meeting with folks out here in the western part of the state to put context around those numbers.
Fabulous, and I think people will be excited about that. Again, I know it's only been a week, so tough, but have you seen, or do you foresee any issues with those billions of dollars that we're going to be receiving from the feds?
Well, it probably would be unfair for me to forecast problems, but what I do think is that there are some opportunities, right? And I think the opportunities are abound, right? Number one, I get the sense from the folks that I know in Western North Carolina that I've talked to over the last, since the hurricane hit. I was up here in Asheville 4 days after the storm, right? And I've been up here a couple of times since then. And I've got friends here, and I've got folks that I've met with, so I have a good sense. I may not have a perfect sense, but I've got a really good sense of what's going on here in North Carolina in the western part of the state. I feel really good about what's needed, right? But my sense today is that there are still some basic needs that need to be met. Shelter, food, water, safety, those types of needs really need to be met on the front end, right? So that, in terms of the way I view, is what we'll be looking for to make sure that those needs are met with the resources that the state has, and that they're met with the federal dollars that come and flow through North Carolina. The secondary question that goes to your question to me, which is, have you seen some things? I think the opportunity is there to take a look at the rebuild. And what does the rebuild look like? Does the rebuild look like simply putting it back like it was before? Or does it look like taking an eye toward the future of what a community, and it should be up to the individual community, what that community wants to do moving forward? Do they want to grow with industry? Do they want to grow in the travel tourism area? Or do they want to grow or just maintain the hometown feeling that existed prior to the storm? That would be, to me, up to the local community to determine, but I think that's where the opportunity is.
Sure. North Carolina put a Democrat back in the governor's mansion, a Democrat back in the attorney general's office. Why do you think they put a conservative in the auditor's office?
Well, I think, number one, I think I ran a good campaign. I think I was a good candidate. I also think that folks looked at the state auditor's office and said, we'd like a change in that office, and we'd like to see what a conservative can do to watch the taxpayer dollars and to hold government accountable. We also returned a Republican to the Treasurer's office and to the Labor Commissioner and to Insurance Commissioner and Ag Commissioner. So I think that's pretty consistent. But it does show, North Carolina voters, they pay attention to the races, and they vote for the individual in large measure. So I'm very proud to be the North Carolina auditor. I'm very proud to work on behalf of all North Carolinians. I've been at work every day since January 2nd. I was in the office till 7 o'clock last night. We're here in Asheville today. I'm not going to stop. This is a passion for me, and I'm looking forward to the days and weeks and months ahead.
So I think however long ago when you said it, was a very interesting point, something that I don't hear that often. You're a proud conservative, but you're charged with being, doling out these things from a nonpartisan point of view. Why is that so important to you that you can sort of separate the two things a little bit?
Well, you have to be able to separate the two things, because when you're running a partisan political campaign, which I ran, right? I'm running as a Republican against a Democrat and a Libertarian, in my case, and you run the political campaign. At the end of the campaign, you have to govern, right? So the people expect you to govern. Even the folks that may not have voted for you on election day. The way our system of government works is that most people are accepting of who wins, right? And they expect the governing authority, the state auditor, to work on their behalf. And it's up to me to leave that party label at the door when I'm in the auditor's office. I've been in there a week. I don't think I've mentioned the word Republican once in the office, right? Because that's not what it's about. It's about working on behalf of all North Carolinians without respect to political party. I think my sense is that if I, as the state auditor, do a really good job of doing that on behalf of all North Carolinians, that they'll be proud to have me as their state auditor.
And that sounds like that's the goal above all.
That's the goal. The goal, look, it's not my personal office. It's the office is owned by the people of North Carolina, right? And it's populated by really good, hardworking state people, state employees, state team members who have been there in many cases 29 and more than 30 years. I've got a team member here who's worked for the state of North Carolina for 31 years. My sense is she could retire at any time. She doesn't want to because she enjoys the work, right? So it's not my office. It's the office of the state auditor. I just happen to be here for the next 4 years, setting the vision and the leadership tone. My goal is to leave the office better than I found it from an office standpoint. And furthermore, my goal is to hold all levels of government accountable, including myself.
So your office was given additional power recently with 382. And I know you've said you did not seek that power, but it was handed to you. How do you see, I guess, that expansion of traditional auditor power?
Yeah, so good question. I didn't seek the Board of Elections as the state auditor, but General Assembly, by constitutional mandate, can delegate authorities to any council of state member, any way that they see appropriate. And the General Assembly has decided to delegate the Board of Elections to the state auditor's office. I think the auditor's office is uniquely situated. If for no other reason, then I've got that extra third oath to be nonpartisan, right? And I don't think that it was any different, the state auditor administering and choosing members of the state Board of Elections and board chairs across counties in North Carolina. It's no different than the governor doing that. In fact, it's one less thing the governor needs to worry about. Now the state auditor can take a look at elections. And the goal, ultimately, with Board of Elections is to give people of North Carolina confidence in the electoral process. That's really what it's all about. Fair, accurate elections run in a professional manner, consistent across the state of North Carolina, that gives people confidence at the end of the day in the electoral process. That would be my goal in administering the Board of Elections.
So in Buncombe County, her name's Corinne Duncan. We talked to her the day or two before the bill was passed, and she told us that these new provisions that come down with the bill, and it's what we've been told is that it's in the name of election efficiency, but she said moving that timeline up from 10 days to 3 days after the election is going to make her job virtually impossible to freely and fairly count those votes. So how does I guess, the executive office work through those challenges? Because I'm sure Buncombe County is not the only election board dealing with that issue, or worried about that issue.
Well, I think there's a hard difference between worrying about something that's on the horizon that we haven't experienced and actually getting it done. I think those are two different things, right? And I would point simply to the state of Florida, where I'm 57 years old. I remember the hanging chads in the state of Florida, right? But today, the state of Florida is an example for election efficiency. They had every vote counted on election day. I don't think that's too much to ask of North Carolina. That would also be an additional goal. Let's try to get every vote counted by election day. Election day is the Super Bowl for boards of elections. Let's all hands on deck. Let's get the job done, and we'll comply with the law. That would be the goal, and do it in a nonpartisan way. So again, the people of North Carolina can have confidence in their electoral process.
Do you have, it's such a terrible question, but first 100-day goal for your office?
Yeah, we do. We've got probably, I would say, a 120-day goal, but first 3 months goal. One, we've got to get our 90-day goal. We've got our executive team that we put in place, leadership in the office, going through, interviewing all the members of the state auditor team to gauge their interest in continuing in the state auditor's office. Haven't had anybody tell me yet that they don't want to continue working on behalf of North Carolinians in the state auditor's office. That's a good sign. And then we're going to set out to begin the Florida ceiling audit of the DMV. That's going to start really post-haste. That's something we've got to get started right away because I think the people of North Carolina really need a result there. That's an agency where I think we can make a difference, and I'm looking forward to working with the governor's office and the legislature at the end of our audit with our recommendations to help move that agency forward so that it serves North Carolinians efficiently and effectively. Right now people are playing games about, where can I go, where can I drive 6 hours to get a driver's license appointment? That really ought not to be the standard here in North Carolina. We also want to continue the bread and butter work of the state auditor, which is financial accounting across the state of North Carolina. So really the biggest items in terms of a first 90-day goal is get the team in place, make sure we've got buy-in from the current team members in the state auditor's office, start this DMV audit on efficiency and effectiveness, put into place the disaster response audit, because speaking of 382, for example, not only did 382 shift elections over to the state auditor's office, 382 basically instructs the auditor's office to audit the disaster funds. We can discretionarily do it, but the legislature's really tasked us with a mandatory audit, and more really than just auditing. It's almost akin to tracking these dollars. So we're putting into place a process to really sort of monitor those dollars as they go out on a little bit more routine, regular basis. What I don't want to see is what we saw a couple of months ago with the North Carolina Office of Relief and Recovery and Relief come in to the Joint Oversight Committee of the legislature and say, we're missing all these millions of dollars and we don't know where it is. We got to be honest, we don't know where it is. And by the way, we need another $220 million to fix things or to finish projects that we thought we had enough money to fix. And I can't really tell you why we don't have. Look, we don't need a replay of that. What we need is accountability from the get-go, and let's get started on the ground floor.
We're just saying we don't need a replay. I think people point out some of the issues that have happened on the eastern part of the state.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's okay.
Part of the
Yeah,
state. That's the eastern part of the state. So what I was referring to was Joint Oversight Committee of the legislature had the head of NCOR, which was the agency that was created under the Cooper administration to administer the funds to the eastern part of the state in response to Florence and Matthew, okay? And that testimony in front of that committee was a disaster. There's millions of dollars out of place. They're behind $220 million. The legislature, as part of 382, appropriated an additional $50 million to eastern North Carolina. And as part of the legislation in 382, they've directed the auditor's office to track those dollars so that we don't have a repeat of folks showing up in front of the legislature saying, we don't know where the money went. And then they've also tasked us with doing the same with the Western North Carolina response.
It sounds like you're very excited to get your hands dirty.
Well, I don't think it's a question of getting my hands dirty. What I'm excited about is I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about defining the auditor's office as the watchdog in North Carolina that holds all levels of government accountable, both financially and for effectiveness and efficiency. So yeah, that excites me as a lifelong North Carolinian. We've had tremendous growth over the last decade in North Carolina. Okay? In order to continue that growth, we're going to have to meet the expectations of new residents and new businesses that want to come here and do business in North Carolina. In order to do that, we've got to have efficient and effective government. So that is really what excites me.